How's everyone feeling? Can you send us if you wish, a private message? Has anyone lost their job? Are there any issues? Are you all okay? I think we had that feedback form completed. I've had half of yous complete it, and I've heard it's all pretty positive that everyone seems to be quite comfortable with doing. It's easy for us because it's business as usual. Probably a little bit different than the trade, but just let Adrian continue with tonight. But if you've got any questions or jump in, I'm here tonight, and obviously Adrian's got a couple more nights and then a well-deserved break. I'm going to be jumping on in a couple of weeks on the 14th. So good effort, Adrian.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that, Brett. So does anybody have any concerns with anything they wanted to bring up? Are you all good? We've got 2 more nights left of this, tonight and Thursday night, and then you have a week off, and then you have Easter. But I'm sorry, you can't go away for a holiday. So that's a bit sad, but we'll stay safe and we'll get through to the other side. I'm allowed to use that term, I think. All good. Maybe just give us a thumbs up if you're all getting this okay. I think the sound's coming through. Yep, so that's all good. You got the emoji down there where you can put a thumbs up in. So what I want to go through tonight is make sure that you're still aware of the that at the top of each of this unit's page. So here I am on the Supply Building Codes unit, and I'm in lesson C11, dealing with energy efficiency. And at the top of this page, I've got information in there once again that's sitting there on the coronavirus and information there for you. We're still running as normal, so keep up with us here. We've also got obviously the National Construction Code and the Australian Standards access for you there, so you can help. And there's also a link to that buildings problems site, which that's been real good. People have been having a little bit of a look at that. If you're not feeling very confident about navigating your way around the National Construction Code, then jump onto this site here and have a bit of a go at some of the problems that nobody's answered yet. Okay, hopefully you're all feeling reasonably good about the codes, and we're not going to become gurus at it, but we should be able to have a bit of an understanding of as to how it works. So I'm going to open up the attendance choice. Just maybe give us a thumbs up or something if that's working. I think that should all be pretty good. So I'm going to do a bit of a lesson tonight, and we've got a few videos for tonight. So I'm not going to show them all, but I do want to highlight a couple of points from them. And I want to go through talking tonight mainly about energy efficiency. And then I've got some activities, an activity down the bottom there for you, which I'll go through regarding energy efficiency. And the main thing that you need to take from tonight is the fact that you just need to be able to work your way around the codes, these 2 big volumes of the codes, so that you can navigate them quickly and easily and be able to find answers to solutions. We were having quite a chat there before in volume 2 about some of the things, basically having a chat about, how much does a builder need to know about the codes and things like that. And I said, well, we had a problem there earlier that was shown with some pipes that were coming out of one of Brett's jobs that he was doing. And the question is, how far can you let the plumber drop the pipes? And so if you know the code and you can access it and you sense there might be a problem, then you can come into here and you can direct the plumber and make sure that your job achieves a final occupancy in time when you get to that stage, instead of being knocked back once you've painted it and carpeted it and done the whole thing. Then you've got to tear all the bulkhead down, change the pipes and readjust everything. So I'm going to open up. Has anybody got a question there? I think we're all good. Somebody might have their microphone on. That's about all. I'm going to open up and show this first part here. And I want you to type in, I just want to, you can read that through yourself, but I want to go to the Australian Building Codes Board, the ABCB, which I found up the top here. So if you just click on this one, that'll take you to the ABCB. And up here in the search box there, and I'm not even logged in, I've typed in there energy efficiency, okay? Because I want to see, what does the Australian Building Codes Board say about energy efficiency? Now, before some of you all got here tonight, we were talking about this and saying, well, some things are quite new. Energy efficiency as a topic is probably only 10, 15 years old, and there's probably only 3 versions of the code that's been out since then, and things are slowly coming into the code. But if you look at some of the hits for the search on the ABCB website, you'll find that they talk about a number of different things that are in investigation. So this particular one gives us information about the energy efficiency. It's got things like glazing calculators for volume 1, glazing calculators for volume 2, lighting calculators for volume 1, volume 1 and 2, minimizing condensation in buildings, all those sorts of things. And these are videos that they've produced, which takes you to some of the calculators and things that they've got. So I'm going to set some of those up for a little bit later, and we'll go and have a look at some of those in a little while. And if we look at some of these, there's various initiatives that have come out as this topic of energy efficiency is being introduced to the National Construction Code. You'll find if we go to volume 2, and I'll go right to the top here, so you can see I'm on volume 2, and I'm on 2019 volume 2, so I've got the latest document there. As we go down and we look down, we pretty much come to our performance provisions here. And as if I shrink these up, you can see that there's a number of headings there. And number 6 is energy efficiency. And we've got a few subheadings under there, which we're going to have a little bit of a look at tonight. Some of these blank ones have been taken out because they've been put elsewhere, so they just leave the space holder there. And then as we come down to number 3, section 3, which is the practical know-how and the measurements and the Australian standards, we also have one here, 312, on energy efficiency. And it has a bunch of information there, things like the building fabric or the outside of the building. Okay. It also has the, shrink that one up, glazing, building sealing, air movement services, and some of those types of things. So there's a number of different items that it deals with there. And it doesn't necessarily go into a lot of information. Some of those are quite hard to understand. If we looked at the glazing, which is on one of these ones here, so external glazing, that's quite hard to understand. And we're going to have a look at that tonight and see how that works. So, but there is some really useful information and advisory notes that's on the ABCB board. And I suggest that some of this information will probably make its way into the National Construction Code as time goes on. And I'll give you an example of some of the ones that I've looked at. Here's one here, which is understanding the NCC energy efficiency for building services. Is a national document for the use of electricians, plumbers, and other on-site trades. That'll be us. Okay, provides a concise representation of the deemed to satisfy provisions in the NCC. So this is just a one document for the NCC for the deemed to satisfy, and then we have that information that can just guide us and direct us towards having a good understanding of the National Construction Code. I actually downloaded that earlier, so you can see that's a 4-page document. And if we have a bit of a look at that, I think you can see that. I'll just make that a tiny bit bigger. So you can see this gives us a little bit of an information at the beginning. It talks about the building fabric, and it's going to take you to the specific parts in the NCC Volume 1, Volume 2. It's a good reference, this one, and it takes you straight to those parts which deal with the building fabric. And it's kind of in easier to understand terms. So you can understand that a little bit there. Then when you come down, you come to building sealing. It's got the specific parts, air movement, air conditioning, ventilation systems. Jump down to the next page. We've got artificial lighting and power. We've got a heated water supply. And then we've got pools and spas here. And we've got facilities for energy monitoring and that type of thing. And then other NCC requirements. And it'll take you to the exact part for each of those as it goes through. I'll just stretch this across a little bit so you can see how useful this could be. If you're working on a hotel or motel precinct, then it's going to have some information here on for you. Okay, I'm not quite sure what an SOU is, but you can see that's what we call an acronym. And I'm just going to copy that, do a search and paste that into the search and search for the first
sole
time.
occupancy unit, I think it is.
I think
Class
it's
2, I think.
2. There you go. So
sole
you can see.
occupancy unit.
Yeah, thank you very much, Brett. So if you find a document like this that uses a thing called an acronym, which is just those letters, somewhere in the beginning of the document, usually the first time the SOU is mentioned, it should have the full word, which it does there, and then it should have in brackets what it's going to use as an abbreviation. Now that's going to save quite a little bit of ink over a lot of printing. I'm joking there, but that's just an example of an acronym that's used throughout these legal documents. And sometimes it's hard to know what they mean, but you kind of have to know, because that's important that we know. That means a sole occupancy unit of a air conditioning or ventilation system. Now that's probably what most of the air conditioners are these days on motels. That's what we would call, without reading that fully, that would be what we would call a split system type system. Okay, and lots of motels and places are going towards those now because they can achieve quite good energy efficiency. So that's an example of what the code has, what the ABCB has. There's heaps and heaps of information in there for you on lots of different topics and different things. And they've got, so this one here talks about consultation impact statement. There you go, and analyzes the impact of potential stringency changes. So they're talking there from the different classes of building. You all understand that now, whereas you mightn't have a few weeks ago. We've got a 3, 5 to 9 and a 5 to 9, and you've got all that type of information there. In this particular one, they were asking you, or are asking you, in fact, they were asking you for feedback at that particular time. And that's kind of how new things are introduced. Now we're having a big COVID situation at the moment. And so there's going to be information here on air systems, air filtering systems, hygiene, and all those sorts of things that are going to come in, because this thing's so huge, it's going to change the codes for building all across the world. Even things like making sure that we've got places where we enter and exit buildings in a way that we don't need to touch door handles and that type of thing. It'll bring in things like taps potentially could be required to be operated with your elbow or somewhere where it's not your hand, and like they have in hospitals and that type of thing. So this is the sort of thing that just keep an eye out for, and generally they'll have some consultation, and then they'll come through to some things that fit in the information that fits into the code. So I'll just check my messages here. So hi Ashley, you've said, where do you find the PDF file for the book you're in, Adrian? I just jumped in. Okay, thank you very much for asking that, Ashley. I think that one, I just came from clicking these ones here. It could be this one. I'll just jump up here and have a look. It wasn't that one. I think it might have been this one here. And it's when I went to understanding the NCC, and it said download the PDF. And when I downloaded it, I just had it on my computer, and I found that particular one there. So that's where that came from. And apologies for sounding, but could you please increase your screen size? Thank you very much, Amy. Thank you for that. So I'll jump on and give that a couple more zooms up here. So hopefully you can see a little bit more. So it's really, really important for you to remember that the NCC is not just the volume 1 and the volume 2. So here's volume 2, nearly 600 pages. Here's volume 1, 750 pages. The NCC is not just those documents. The NCC is a whole compilation of things, and there's some actually really good resources in here. One of them is a glazing calculator that I just saw, and I haven't actually watched that video, but I believe there's a calculator here somewhere. I think I showed you that the other night where we talked about the handbook for energy efficiency provisions and things, but this will go through and obviously show you a calculator from volume 2, which we could find on here. And there are these sorts of things which are available. We didn't go, that's not actually showing any hits because I might have typed that in wrong. Maybe it's in volume 1. No, they don't have a hit for that word there. So there are different programs. I think they call it something else now, because there is a calculator like BASICS and some of those things which the New South Wales government uses. And this will talk to you about some of the different programs. They're using the word calculator there, glazing calculator. And we're not doing glazing tonight, but I just saw that and thought that might be interesting for you. There's heaps and heaps of different resources and things that you can access. So let me get back to energy efficiency. I want to focus on one area tonight where I'll show you where I got this off the Building Codes board, and it shows you something that's very interesting for you all to know and understand. You can get that basically from, if I type up here into the search, if I type in climate zones, I think it comes up with a hit pretty soon there for that. Internet seems to have frozen there. There we go. Climate zone map, and I want the Australia-wide one. You can see we've got a whole lot of different information there on climate zones, and I want the Australian-wide one. So when I click on that one, I'll come up with another document here, which I can download as a PDF. And this actually shows me the different climate zones that operate within Australia. Now, when you download that, which I have, you can see a lot closer zoom how the colors match up to where you are. But the one thing I want to pinpoint now, which comes back to where I put my little information here, is that we've pretty much, I think I can zoom this one up just a little bit more. We can see that pretty much we have different zones that are available for us. Actually, that's that'll be okay. So pretty much here we've got climate zone 1, which is high humidity, summer and warm winter. So I'm going to go to the, I'll be ducking back and forwards here to the code because I can zoom this one up a little bit more to show you that. And I can move that around with my hand there. So we can see we've got 8 zones, 1 through to 8. I'll just get this so I can flick back and forwards a little bit, and you can see, because I don't actually have the climate zone mentionings on there. So we've got climate zone 1, for example, and climate zone 1 is high humidity summer and warm winter. Okay, and that's the, what do you call that, orange, I guess, and that's right across the top of Australia. Look at that. So there's our climate zone 1. If we're not quite sure, and we've got a little town out the back of somewhere that we're not quite sure about, it lists all the towns. I'll show you that in a second too. Let's go, so we've gone to the extreme there. Let's go to the 8 extreme, climate zone 8. Can anybody type into the chat box just by looking at the map what they think it might be called? Or grab the microphone. Look where it is. That's white. I'm going to have to help you. That's alpine. Okay, so there's the extremes we're looking at, all the way from alpine through to high humidity summer, warm winter, and then we have a whole heap of different options in between. Let's have a look and see if we can spot where Wollongong is. Well, that's quite hard to see there, isn't it? And what colour would you call that? That could be quite hard to see. So fortunately, on this document, which, remember, I just got this off the I'll just shut that one down for now and go back to where I had the climate zone map. So I got this off the Australian Building Codes booklet, and on this document, which you can download there, you'll end up with this document here. It's a 7-page document, and from this document, we're able to look for towns and places. Let's have a look at Griffith. There's Griffith, and it's a climate zone 4. Let's go up here and see what climate zone 4 is. So 4's a sort of a, I don't know, what do you call that, a sandy sort of colour? Frank, what, you guys out there, what would you call that? So a vast majority of inland Australia is climate zone 4. Let's see what the name for climate zone 4 is. Hot, dry summer, cool winter. Okay, so that's your climate zone 4. Look at the side, look at Australia and how big that is. That's all the southern part of Australia through there, except near the coast. So that's a massive area there. Hot, dry summer, cool winter. All right, let's have a look and see where Wagga is. I think we had it up here somewhere. We're obviously going to be W for Wagga. I'll just type it in here. There's Wagga. We're also a 4. Let's check for Wollongong. Wollongong's a 5. Let's check for, I know we've got Stuart up at up on the highlands there. Let's check for somewhere like Picton, for example.
Try
That's
Cooma
not,
or Bega, Adrian.
yeah, so Picton, for example, that's not going to come up there because it's a bit too small. So it's not going to list every town. If we just go for something like Bega, there's your Bega. We can go for Cooma. Bega's a number 6. Let's have a look at I think I spelt that wrong there, did I? Cooma used to be in here. Let's go down here to Cooma. Kuma's not there, so but I think they've got Jindabyne. Jindabyne's not there. Threadbow, I might be spelling it wrong while because you're all looking at me and it's hard to concentrate. There's an 8. Remember what the most extreme one was? I'll go back up to the map here. If we look at where places are, you can kind of get a pretty good idea. It's not the perfect map, but this is kind of the map that they use on the Australian standard for your weather and your energy efficiency. Now, it's quite different building a house that's in the orange part of Australia up here, which has high humidity summer, warm winter. In those 5 words there's not one of them that relates to cold, really, is there? High humidity summer, well, summer is pretty warm, and warm winter. So if anybody has ever been from above Mackay through to up near Exmouth and anywhere across the top there, you'll know that's pretty much don't take your jumper almost any time of the year. Almost. When the wind blows off the bay at Darwin, it can get, at the Mindil markets, it can get a little bit cool, but I've been there all times of the year and I don't think I've used a jumper until you go into the shopping centres because they're freezing cold. So has anybody got any comments about that? Anybody been up around that area there? Is there something with a house that someone can type into the chat box to tell me that's unique about houses built up there that you would never see built inland or in many of the other climate zones? Can somebody type something into the chat box or grab the microphone and tell me something unique about the outside envelope of a house? Specifically the roof. I can't give you any more hints. Specifically the gutters. What type of gutters do they use up there? Has anybody ever been to Darwin? Has anybody ever been to any of those tropical areas? There's no gutters. They don't have gutters up there. At the risk of boring you, I'll let you all go there and look yourselves, actually. So they have cyclone ties and all those things, but you drive around there and they don't usually have gutters because they can't hold the rainfall. When they have a rain event up there, it's normally a metre of rain or something like that. However, when we come down here to these drier areas, we need a lot different as far as energy efficiency. Okay, we've got to make sure that we've built something that's quite a bit different to what we might have up there. So that's all lovely. All following me okay there? So that's where it's real important that we have a bit more of an understanding there about energy efficiency. I just want to quickly show you on volume 2 where it talks about energy efficiency, and we'll just have a real quick overview of what it's going to talk about. So here it's going to talk about energy efficiency, the building fabric, which as we learnt earlier on is the outside of the building. And then it's going to talk about the glazing. We're going to talk about sealing the building from airflow. We're going to talk about air movement within a building and services. Okay, and then it's going to go through a couple of different things there, like heating and cooling loads. It's going to talk about fabric thermal insulation, roofs, roof lights, external walls, floors, attached Class 10A buildings. And it's going to talk about external glazing, shading. There's going to be information on chimneys and flues, roof lights. This is to do with sealing a building. Going to be information on exhaust fans, construction of ceilings, walls and floors, evaporative coolers, all this type of thing. You don't even use evaporative coolers, I'm pretty sure, over in Wollongong and some of those areas because they don't really work so much over there, and especially up around Darwin and those areas, they don't use them so much. So then we come down to air movement. We talk about ventilation openings. We talk about ceiling fans and evaporative coolers. And then we've got services. How do you insulate the services? What happens with your central heating, water piping? So who was it? Joel mentioned in there, and Jacob and Josh and a few others have mentioned the word alpine. And as soon as you go into an alpine area or even inland in a lot of areas, you have to insulate any pipes that are outside because the water that's in those pipes running to your tap can freeze and burst the pipe. And that used to be a common problem years ago. And so that's things like having insulation on your services. That could be in many of your services. So you need a lot more heating down in the southern Australia and the higher areas, and a lot more cooling up north. So we've got quite a lot of different things there. And this part of the code, where you can see all these headings set out like this, is a real good place to go if you're searching for something. And then these ones, normally you can just click on them and it'll just take you straight to the content. So I'm actually in section 3 here. You can tell that because it's got a number 3 in front of everything we look at. If we go back to section 2, and then we look at energy efficiency, and so section 2 is here. And once again, you can tell it's section 2 because it's got a 2 in front of everything. If we go down to this one, this is in volume 2 once again. It's going to go through lots and lots of different information, overall general information on buildings. And just for a second before I open up some of the videos and then the activity for tonight, I just want to follow a little theme here with you. So in this particular case, we've got performance requirement 2.6.1, which is the building. Okay, so I've got that one set up there for you. And it says a building must have, to the degree necessary, a level of thermal performance to facilitate the efficient use of energy for artificial heating and cooling appropriate to A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Are there any more down here? No, that's it. So it's got to have that sentence there appropriate to each one of those. One of them is the function or use of the building. The other one's the internal environment of the building. The other one is the location of the building in Australia. The other one's in relation to effects to permanent features like topography, structures, buildings, and things like that. The other one's in relation to solar, the other thing that it must be able to heat and cool in relation to. Then the other one here is to do with the building envelope, so the ceiling of the building. And the other performance criteria here is to do with utilisation of air movement, okay, to assist cooling. And the main thing we're looking at there is cooling. So these are some of the performance requirements. It tells us nothing there about what size air conditioner, what efficiency of air conditioner, where you face the building, where you locate the building, or anything like that. But it just says you must it must be it must have a level of thermal performance to facilitate the efficient use of energy. Now, the most important thing here is to remember that the whole objective is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Okay. Now, I have no idea how they calculate all of this, but they are saying here that it must be buildings and their services must be capable of efficiently using energy, and it must be a building and its services must be able to obtain their energy from a low greenhouse gas intensity source, an on-site renewable energy source, or another process as reclaimed energy. So these are some of the sorts of things that and it doesn't actually tell you how much or any of those sorts of things. This is just the objective of it through here about what we're trying to aim for. Okay. So when we move on from here, 2.6.1, we move down to 3, and we jump down to 3.12, which is the practical Australian standard, get your tape measure out and measure it type information, or get your thermometer out and measure it. And this will tell us more information about how to actually do what it told us we have to do. And for my little example here, I'm just going to jump down to 3.12.0. I'll just expand this one out a little bit. So 3.12, I just made note of this earlier, 3.12.01, I think it was. I'll just check on here. Here we go, 3.12.0. Yeah, jump in someone if you had a question. I'll just check my messages here. You have to insulate all pipes in Alpine, even in the walls. That's interesting. Stephen's come from Jindabyne, so you know all about this, Steve. And Stephen says there you've got to insulate all pipes in Alpine. That's good. Jess says, what product would you insulate an external pipe in Alpine areas? So I'll let you all have a conversation there about that, and then I'll pick up on that in a minute. So if we look at this particular one here, now we're getting to the real practical things here. It says performance requirement 261, which I just went through with you, for the thermal performance of the building is satisfied by complying with that one, and that one, and that one, and all of these. So we've got A, B, C, D, F, and we've also got a couple more here because that's just number 1. We've also got these ones, and they've all got an end at the back of them. Okay, so they're talking about different things. This one here is talking about heating and cooling loads, this first one. And the next one is dealing with the building fabric, thermal insulation. The next one's the thermal breaks. An example of a thermal break is the material that holds the window. So Tom, I think your sound's on there. I'll just mute yours so that you're all good there. So thermal breaks is things like the break, and some windows won't have the aluminium frame and then a piece of rubber and then the glass, because the aluminium is normally one extruded piece of aluminium from the outside of the window to the inside. And if you feel the inside of your aluminium window frame in winter, it can be freezing cold. So quite often what happens on windows, and Stephen would be able to tell us more about it, is they'll either use timber windows, which are very good thermal break, or else they will use they'll use a situation where you've got a plastic break where the outside aluminium keys and slots into the inside aluminium with a piece of plastic that fits between them. So that's good. Lagging's not recommended to have external pipes. So there's a whole thing about all of that. There's a whole information on all of that, and there'd be an Australian standard for those pipes and things, and that would probably be more in the plumbing department. I haven't actually looked into it here, but you can definitely have a look and then let us know. So you can see all the different things that it's talking about there. And then if we go down to one here that I want to focus on, which is 31201, which is just down here a little bit, 31201, I'm looking at heating and cooling loads. It says here a building must achieve an energy rating, including the separate heating and cooling load limits, using house energy rating software. Okay, so that's really introduced us to something interesting there. So you've got to use that software, and it's got to be of greater than or equal to 6 stars. Okay, or it's not an and, fortunately, it's an or. So for buildings in climate, for your microphone keeps coming on, Tom. I'm not sure if you're tapping the button, but definitely turn it on and chat if you want to chat to us. I think you might be accidentally turning it on. So it says here we've got to achieve greater than or equal to 6 stars, okay, which we'll find out what that is in a second. Or for a building in climate zones 1 or 2, where is 1 or 2? Let's just have a quick look. I can have a look at where 1 or 2 is. So 1 or 2 is the hotter areas. That's everything up around the top of Australia there. So for a 1 or 2, which is pretty warm, you take your jumper off in those ones. 5.5 stars. Just excuse me a sec. So 5.5 stars if the building has an outdoor living area as described in C. If the outdoor living area is fully covered with an impervious roof covering, total R value greater than or equal to. Have you gone to sleep yet? It's a wonder, because it gets quite boring. So a really important point came up earlier that I think it might have been Joel and I were having a chat about when we were on earlier, and then we continued it when others jumped on and said, well, how much do you and I as a builder have to be aware and do all of this sort of stuff? Because that's a huge amount of information right there. If you look at what that's asking for right there, that's just absolutely especially now, you're probably gone to sleep going halfway through it. So we don't have to be so involved in all of that, but our building designer needs to be all over it. And we just have to know that they've done it and be aware that we can just go and check and make sure that if there's something we're not sure about or we make some alterations, then we can make sure we comply so we don't get knocked back right at the end. If by the time the council inspector comes and looks at the building and finds that you haven't done this or this or this, then you can end up with a situation where you've got to you've got to make some changes to your building that could be quite expensive. And so thanks, Steve. Many mornings with no water in the garden taps because they are frozen. That's exactly right. So an example of what I'm talking about is I built a house years ago that was right on the edge of a new rule coming out. And when I built the house, I wrapped it in what we used to always use for the building company I was working with when I was an apprentice, and we wrapped it in sarking. And the inspector came, so by then I had the windows in, the brickwork up, just ready to put the plasterboard up, and the inspector came and said, there's no information on this sarking that says that it's fire rated. And I said, well, this is what we've always used for all our buildings. He said, yeah, but the rules changed and you're supposed to keep up to date with the rules. And so you got to pull it out. So I had to go around with a Stanley knife and take all the sarking out in the cavities. There's still little bits of sarking on the outside of the studs, but it was in a climate zone which was very mild. So I didn't have to have sarking. I just put it on there because I thought it would be nicer to have. And so that building couldn't have sarking because the brickwork was already up. And so that's an example of how we kind of have to be aware of these sorts of things, because it doesn't actually mention sarking often in plans and specifications, or it didn't back then. And so we got to just try and keep up to date with them and have a bit of a check as we go through and make sure that we're aware of how that works. So as we look through here, that pretty much goes through the heating and cooling loads. I want to just do a little diversion, so I'll just write down 362, page 362 up the top here, so I can come back to it a second, because I want to go to the definition for housing energy software and just have a quick look at that. So this is housing energy rating software for the purposes of volume 2, applied to V, that's a verification method, is V2622, means software accredited. I'll just make that bigger so you can, whoop, not too big. So hopefully you can see that okay. So it means software accredited or previously accredited under the National Housing Energy Rating Scheme. That used to be called, we used to call that NATHERS, National Energy Rating Scheme, and the additional functionality provided in non-regulatory mode and applied to 3102 means software accredited under the National House Energy Rating Scheme. Okay, so there's a scheme that you would have to be aware of. It gives us more information in here, and it talks about that. NATHERS refers to the Australian government scheme that facilitates housing energy ratings from software tools, which are used to assess the potential thermal. I'll bet half of you have gone over to Google and you've looked up NATHERS, RS. So there'll be a government site here once we get past the advertisements. There it is, nathers.gov.au. Let's have a quick look at that. So this is the nathers.gov.au, and this will relate through, and this is the one that's allowed to be used for the National Construction Code. There's a lot of good information in there, actually. You can have a look at the video. You can have a look through here. There's heaps of resources. Let's have a look at, none of that drops down without us clicking on it. There's the about, give you more information, who governs it. So that's by the Commonwealth Government. And then information there for homeowners and builders. I'll let you read that through yourselves. Here's information for assessors. I've got an idea it might be an online thing now. I haven't done this for quite a while, but we do go through and have a look at this a little bit later. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Brett, if you're still there, I think they go through and do a NATHERS, is it in structures or one of those ones? I just forget where it was.
Thermal efficiency, Adrian.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, yep. Okay, so we'll go and do that sort of thing later on. So there's, in New South Wales, they use a thing called Basics, which can relate through to there. So this is an example of, you're probably all familiar with that, because there'll be a document that comes through with the plans and the specifications and the engineer's details. And so here's your Basics information there, and you log in and you work through all your information on that one there. So hopefully that's all good for you. So I'll just jump back to here and I'll go back to this. Yeah, go in.
Microsoft Teams is just freezing a couple of times, so if I'm a bit slow on response, I'll just type it in the chat box.
Yeah, that's okay. Thanks. I know it does freeze sometimes, doesn't it? That's all good. So we went through a little bit there. That's where the 6 stars comes from. You got to be able to achieve that. And you notice back on one of those sites I was looking at, I think it was here, they were advertising the fact, would you like some 7-star plans? So to get a star, there's certain ways, certain things you've got to do to be able to get it. And you can all have a look through there yourselves and get an idea of how that all works. And there's software there you can tap into. The Basics is going to give you stars and things as well. So that's, yep, goes through a bunch of different things and looks at your plans, and many of you are already aware of that from this has been around so long now, so that you can see that it's buildings have been designed and built to it so that they can achieve these types of things. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to skip back to, I think I was going to talk about, I just want to show you one more thing here. So there's a little flow chart. There's a spot here. I'll just scroll down and it shows us a little location of your building plan. So I was looking at this a little bit earlier. So we come to this in one of the questions where we look at building materials. Just don't get too dizzy for a second. So we get this is where we get our R values for our different ceiling insulations and things like that, which will be designed. We keep on coming down here, and I think there was a spot down here where we talked. There was a really good table. There's an example there where it says what the R value, the total R value of, for example, a building construction is, and this is weatherboard external wall construction. That's the inside of the house, the framing, the outside of the house with weatherboards. And then it's got another one here listed as fibre cement sheet. We've got clay masonry, external wall, and there's just a couple of main ones there. We've got concrete block masonry wall. I think there's a cavity clay masonry wall, so it's a double brick wall, external insulated clay masonry. Okay, external wall. I think we might have a Hebel one, or autoclaved aerated concrete. There it is. They don't call it Hebel because Hebel is CSR's brand name. That's a proprietary name, and the government publication here can't use Hebel because then the other manufacturers will get upset. Obviously, there you got your autoclaved aerated concrete, and then down here we've got a location of your building. Which comes up. If somebody can see it quicker than me, just type it into the chat box. I think it's at the bottom of glazing. And this tells us about how we locate our building has a big impact on on our energy rating. There we go. So this is figure 3.12.2.1 orientation sectors. Okay, and this is real important because this is how you have to basically set it up so that you know which way your building's orienting for the main, and you have to read the whole area around that. But pretty much you can see here you've got your true north. We've obviously got east, south, west, back to north, and we have different sectors where we have to work, and you can see they've got degrees and things there, and you'd have to refer to that for your different orientation to be able to achieve. So it's figure 3.12.2.1. I'll just grab that and see where it talks about that back earlier. We'll go back to the previous mention, and it's highlighted there somewhere. So here it talks about the different orientation sectors, and you can see you get different factors. So this is going to give you a summer exposure factor, and there's a whole chart here that just keeps referring to all the time until we get past all the charts, and that's for the engineer and the designer to mostly work with and be aware of. Okay, so that's dealing with all of that, and that'll go back for quite a way. I'll jump back here to our lesson for tonight. So I've pretty much gone through most of the information there that we're going to go through as far as that. I'm going to open up a couple of sites and also some videos that I'll let you work through yourselves and have a look at. This first one here I want to show you is the Australian, a really good Your Home website the Australian government has set up as a guide to environmentally sustainable homes. And so on this particular site, it's got lots of information there, lots of house designs, lots of case studies, and heaps of information there that you can actually access while you're on there. Get examples of plans, case studies. It looks like a free download design for place energy efficient house plans and elevations. There's lots and lots of information there. And this Your Home website is one that's very, very well known throughout the industry as being something that is good for us to look at for energy efficiency. There's a couple of videos here that I'm not going to actually play
Steve Graham
much of, because I'm going to let you have a little look through these yourselves, but I just want to show you a couple of highlight points with it. So this one, for example, I think Brett said this is a little bit old now, but basically this is an opening and an information about a special house that potentially is Enshul Living as Australia's future of energy efficient housing, and it just shows you information about these houses. There's quite a bit of talking there, but you can see with these ones, there's some features with these houses that are energy efficient, and they'll talk about it a little bit there. There'll be a little bit of talking, so I'll let you all follow that through yourselves. Then I want to just highlight for you an energy efficient walling system, just one of many. Now, remember, these types of products would come under the performance, because they're so new, they'd have to come under the performance solutions. And this particular one looks like that's by Bondor Inshul Wall. Now, some of these may not even be available if they're a little bit older, but in this particular case, this is where they are going to stand up panels, okay, in place. And that's a product information information video about how this might work for a particular building, and you can look at that yourselves. Goes for just over 8 minutes, and have a look at how they fit things together. One common theme with a lot of these types of systems is where we'll have polystyrene foam in between two sheets of a ColourBond type metal, and that can give you a nice finish on the outside, nice finish on the inside, good insulation. There'll normally be holes here and there for things like services, lights, and all those sorts of things. And then pretty much what you'll have there is you'll have the ability to be able to have something that looks nice, gives you really good insulation. You're generally going to be best if you stick to fairly flat surfaces, and you can have something that's got excellent insulation for a building. So I'll let you all look at that yourselves. Then there's one here, Rytec, and we built a job with some TAFE students years ago, a bunch of Certificate 2 students. And I did have some pictures of it somewhere, but anyhow, basically what this does is you put your building up. Just let that buffer up there. You put your building up and you put framework in place, and then you've got these ColourBond sheets. So they would be a standard ColourBond custom orb corrugated iron sheet on this side, which is your 762 coverage of the sheet. So there's one at the bottom, one at the top, and in between you have varying thicknesses of foam depending on how much insulation you require. And then as you go through with those sheets, they pretty much give you the advantage of having real good insulation. There's an end view, kind of, I think there it is. So there's a sheet that he's walking on, a sheet underneath. So you've got your finished surface underneath, no need for painting. Your finished surface on top, ready for guttering or anything. Then you've got holes every now and then where you can put your downlights and those types of things, and you've got great insulation all through there. These products have really big span. The job that we did in Wagga was probably 5 or 6 or 7 meters span of just these just this material, the same as that. We just got a crane in, lifted them up into place, and then just spread them out and screwed them together with great big long screws, and you end up with just attach your gutter and things on the end of them, and you've got a finished job. You can see it's corrugated under there. One problem that arises is how do you finish off the outside wall surface with this corrugated surface, and you can get all sorts of products that fit in there that pretty much match up and make that insect proof. So these are a product that can be quite good, quite useful, and that's just another way of being able to achieve some energy efficiency for your building. And then the last one that I'm going to show here for you is, I seem to recall this was a University of Wollongong. We'll just let that buffer up a bit there. And this is a presentation thing, the University of Wollongong. And Brett, might get you to have a little chat about that. I'll just try and get a good picture of it so that the students can see. And do you want to just jump on and give us a
5 out of the 10 categories.
A quick overview of that so that they don't need to watch the whole video? Brett might have gone for now. Glenn, do you recall this? Oh, Glenn's not there either. Stuart, you don't recall this. Anyway, you can all watch that yourselves and pick up on that. That's a real good information video.
Mate, I'm here. It's really slow for me to click on and unmute. I wasn't part of it, but it was a job done by the University of Wollongong, and actually TAFE Wollongong were part of it, and they went over to China and they won the decathlon for the most sustainable house. I think maybe Stuart, you might be a bit more familiar with it. I wasn't a part of it, but they were there over 6 to 8 weeks building it, and their main focus was a sustainable house, which won the award. I think I might, maybe when we do structures, I might probably do a bit of research myself and go into it in a bit more depth, because I wasn't very, very familiar, I wasn't a part of it, but they actually won throughout the whole of the world, and that was a few years ago. I think they're doing another one now as we speak.
Very good. Yeah, thanks very much for that, Brett. So that's great. So that's an example of just some different houses. You can see in that particular case, that's got solar, and that's becoming more and more widespread across housing, and it's just really taken off. So that's huge advances in that area. And so it's definitely something to think about. Just check out what's available. And when you build a house these days, don't just do things always the way that you've always done them, or that you were taught to do them by your particular builder. Check out different methods of doing things. And these days, it's much better to try and at least spend a bit of time researching what some of the alternatives are. I see Nicholas had a question there. How would that be fire rated? And thanks for that, Brett. You've answered that. So because some of these,
yeah,
go on.
It's a really good point, Adrian. Where Nick's asking, we're in a times now where we're not going to memorize everything because there's so much new stuff out there. And if you, as a builder, start thinking outside the box and start sort of focusing on, for example, energy efficiency and becoming an expert in that field, that's where you might be a lot more successful, especially now with even, COVID-19 and how we're going to start building. It's going to change completely. So bear that in mind.
Yeah, that's right. So there'll be changes and things come through. And of course, anything that's unique, like these last few products that I've shown you there on the page, to do with those things, they're not going to be in the code for a while. For example, if we do a search for polystyrene, I'm not even sure that comes up very much. Or there's a little bit of polystyrene filler. I'll just grab that word and see whether they mention things like polystyrene cladding of buildings. It's been around for quite a while, and there's still not a lot there. So we're talking there about polystyrene boards, expanded polystyrene strips. Maybe on your search thing, you can see how many times that mentions it. That's about it. There's very few. Some of these things are quite new, and they haven't made it to the code yet. So whoever manufactures these products, they would have to take responsibility for the fire ratings. And if you go to, for example, Rytech's a bad example, but I'll keep going back to it because we built the building out of it, and there was a lot of information on it back then. It's actually was quite hard to find information. I think they changed the name to Arc Panel. And the company who do this has technical information. The company who build these things have technical libraries, and that's where you can go and get all their documentation about, okay, please enter your details below. So I've got to enter details to get it. So they in their technical library for these manufacturers, that's where they will have their information that's available. And obviously I've got to tell them who I am and why I want it. And then they'll make that available, and that would have its fire rating and testing there. They may have used an accredited fire rating place, and I'll just show you what I was showing. I think it was I think I might have even covered this with you all a little bit earlier. If we go to the referenced documents, which is down the bottom here, and we start searching for energy, you'll see that like I was saying earlier, most of the standards that are showing in here are to do with how you calculate the energy consumption, or how you work out the amount of the evaluation of the building energy analysis, or things like that. They're most of the standards. So people who go and make a Rytech product, or whatever else you want to call it, product, they go and grab these standards, and then they make sure that their testing is according to 4234 or things like that. And that's a bit of a quick example of how that can work. So I think you're all done very well, been very patient tonight. Now I'm going to go through and show this last one, and just remember Thursday night's the last, and we cover disability and commercial. And so I'm going to turn myself over to a student so you can see what I see, and everything's opened up for you tonight. You're welcome to go for it, and then say goodbye before you go. And I'm just going to work my way through this quiz. I did make it so it's sequential, and it just runs question after question. There are some overlap of questions that we've done before. That's probably a good little refresher for you. In that case, just guess them, and best you know, because you've done them before, and then put them in and just see how you go with all of that. So I'm going to ask the recording to stop now. I think we're pretty right for that. Glenn's probably got that there.